Today we'll be taking a look at the LASAL Machine Manager. So now we have another server called readString, and again we'll just create a new write method on that server. So right click on the server, standard methods write. Just an interesting observation is when you add a write method, the server as per logic can't be write protected because no one will ever be able to trigger the write method, so the write protection falls away. Right, so looking at the code inside the write method, what we will do is exactly in the same fashion, we'll write our code in here. But what we will do is we will read our string, our multi-byte data over here, over this channel, and we will copy it into some local memory, which we'll define here, right? Just as a proof of concept. So therefore, we need to define some local memory. So I'll define a local variable. So I'll type the var processor command there and say here a string, which stands for array string, right? And define it as an array 0 to, and now we need to know how many characters this array should be, how large it should be, and for that I'll use a define. So I'll right click on Multimaster demo class and edit defines, and here I'll type hashtag or hash define, and this I'll call strlen, right, which is stringlen, make it 30 characters long. And now I'll say a string is an array of 0 to strlen -1, because 0 is included, so it's now 0 to 29, which is 30 characters of char, right? Because that's all a string really is a list of chars, right? And now we're going to have to scan over our string to clear it out, so we'll need a counter. So I'll simply create ud count, which is going to be a udint, right? And whenever someone writes to my server, I'm going to say if they've written anything other than a 1, so if read string, anything other than a 0 is not 0, then automatically make read string 0 again, so read string becomes 0, right? And here I'm now going to clear out my a string, right? Because we have here 30 characters, so it's 30 times 8 bits or 30 bytes that can contain some random data, so we want to clear that out. So to do that, I'm going to say for, use a simple for loop, for ud count, and this is why we created ud count, becomes 0 to, and here we can say strlen -1, right? So for ud count becomes 0 to strlen -1, a string in position strlen, sorry, ud count becomes 0x00, which is just the string terminator character, right? So now we will clear out the memory defined by a string, right? And then we will simply copy whatever is inside the string connected on here into a string. So to do that, we'll simply say co string, because this is the client, the object channel client that we've defined to connect to the string, dot, and now we'll have a method called read data off, right? Now read data off, when you click on it, press F11 and looks at the comment, it will basically say that you are giving it a pointer to some memory, and it will read whatever is inside the string object into that memory with an offset. So in our case, we'll make the offset 0. Just shift these things so it looks neat. And then the pointer to the data, the pointer to the area to write to, is a string, right? So we'll say hash, which means pointer to a string in position 0. And then max characters, we know the max amount of characters we can accept is strlen, right? So now, whenever someone writes anything other than 0, then read string will be zeroed again. We'll step over our string, which we've defined locally, and we'll clear it out. And then we'll read the data that is currently inside the string on the other station into a string, right? And that is a multi-byte transfer happening right there when we call that method. Right, so let's just compile this code. And here we go, we have an error. right? The error says name collision with defined string len not replaced. Right, so in our case we can't use string len because that's already been used internally. We'll just change this and we'll say string len, right? So just replace everywhere we used strlen with string len, right? And compile again. Here we go, and 0 errors, 0 warnings. That's what we want to see. Right, so now if we go to our WorldNet and we download onto our controller, you see that we have 2 quotation marks with no string value inside them, right? So we'll go to our other CPU, right, and we'll write inside our string hello world, right, and we'll go to our other station. This is now our HMI station, and immediately you see that the string data contains hello world exclamation mark. Right, so if I write on write string, there's no visible thing that happens here, but what we can do is set a breakpoint at the end of our function. Right, so now if we write on read string, I'll just write to 1, we should hit a breakpoint, and then if we use the debugger watch, we can simply define a string as a watch. So I'll simply double click on a string, drag that into my debugger watch, and immediately we see that its a string contains hello world exclamation mark, just as we expected. Right, and that basically demonstrates multi-byte transfer over the Multimaster. Right, so those are then the 2 different data types you can transfer. You can transfer a 4-byte value, which would be a double int or a UDInt or an enumeration value or anything that is 4 bytes really. And you can also transfer multi-bytes by either using string or using Merker EX in the same fashion.